Close your eyes for a moment, not for long, just long enough to imagine something. Imagine it is the year 2075. Your grandchildren are alive, maybe your great-grandchildren. They are going to school, but not in a building. They are learning from an artificial intelligence that knows more about every subject that has ever been studied than every professor at every university on Earth combined. They may live to be 150 years old, maybe longer. They may have the option to back up their memories, to enhance their intelligence, to connect their minds directly to a network of information that makes the internet of today look like a stone tablet. Some of them may choose to leave Earth entirely, not as astronauts on a mission, as citizens, permanent residents of another world, living and dying and raising children on a planet that has no oceans, no rain, no breathable air, but that humanity decided to call home anyway. This is not science fiction. This is the plan. This is what Elon Musk, and the man who has already done things that 3 generations of scientists said were impossible, has been building toward. Not quietly, not secretly, loudly, publicly, with the full weight of his fortune and his obsession and his refusal to accept that the story of humanity ends on this one small planet, and the future he is describing, the one he is not just predicting but actively constructing, is either the most exciting thing you will ever hear or the most terrifying, possibly both. Today, we are going to look at it directly without the filter of either blind worship or reflexive dismissal, with the honest, open eyes of people who understand that the future is coming whether we are ready or not. It is 2002. The dot-com bubble has just burst. The economy is in freefall. A 31-year-old man has just sold his second company, PayPal, to eBay for $1.5 billion. He is now one of the richest people on Earth. Most people in that position do one thing. They stop, they buy the island, they buy the yacht, they retire to a life of extraordinary comfort and leave the hard problems to someone else. He does not stop. He does something that the people around him, his friends, his advisors, his family, unanimously describe as potentially insane. He takes most of his money, and he decides to spend it on rockets, not because he thinks it will make him richer. The calculations clearly suggest it will not because there is a market demand that makes this an obvious business opportunity. There is not because anyone is asking him to do this, because he is terrified of a specific scenario that he has been unable to stop thinking about for years. The scenario where something goes wrong on Earth, where a pandemic, or a war, or a climate catastrophe, or an asteroid, or some combination of disasters that we cannot predict eliminates the conditions necessary for human life and humanity. The entire experiment, everything that every human being who ever lived, built and suffered and loved and created, ends. Not with a dramatic final chapter, with a quiet extinction. Elon Musk decided he could not live with that possibility without doing something about it. Not because he was certain he could prevent it, because he believed that if it was preventable, if the human species becoming multiplanetary was the insurance policy against total extinction, then someone had to start building the insurance policy. And if no one else was going to do it, he was. That decision, made by one person sitting with the weight of an existential fear that most of us choose not to think about, is the beginning of the story of what the future of humanity is going to look like, and it is a story that belongs to all of us. Let us talk about what Musk actually believes is coming, not the optimistic version, not the press release version, the honest version, the one he has shared in interviews and speeches when he lets the careful framing drop and speaks from the place of genuine conviction and genuine alarm. He believes we are approaching the most consequential period in human history, not the most exciting. The most consequential, there is a difference. Exciting is manageable. Exciting is something you can choose to engage with or not. Consequential means the choices made in the next 20 to 30 years will determine the trajectory of human civilization for centuries, possibly forever. The first thing he warns about is artificial intelligence. And this is where the man who builds AI companies says something that should make you stop scrolling and pay close attention. He has said, repeatedly, with increasing urgency, that AI is potentially the most dangerous technology ever created by human beings. Not dangerous in the way a gun is dangerous. Not dangerous in the way a chemical weapon is dangerous. Dangerous in an entirely new category of dangerous. He compares it to summoning a demon, a thing of extraordinary power that once unleashed does not take instructions particularly well from the humans who released it. He has said that an AI that becomes significantly more intelligent than the smartest human being who has ever lived, which he believes is coming within years, not decades, will be to us what we are to a very smart dog. We love our dogs, but we do not ask them for input on major decisions, and that asymmetry, that fundamental gap between the intelligence of the tool and the intelligence of the person trying to control it, is what keeps him awake at night in a way that no business problem ever has. The second thing, population collapse. Population. While most of the world worries about overpopulation, Musk has been warning for years about the opposite problem. Birth rates in developed countries are falling off a cliff. Japan, South Korea, large parts of Europe are already shrinking. If the trend continues, and the data suggests it will, the human population does not grow to 10 billion and plateau. It shrinks. Not dramatically, not suddenly, slowly, quietly. A civilization fading rather than exploding. He has called this a much bigger risk to the future of humanity than almost anything else being discussed in boardrooms and parliaments and international summits, and almost nobody is treating it with the urgency it deserves. The third thing is the one that drives everything he has built. The single point of failure. Every human being who has ever lived. Every painting, every symphony, every scientific discovery, every act of love and courage and sacrifice in the entire history of our species. It all lives on one rock. One small, pale, blue rock orbiting one medium-sized star in one unremarkable galaxy among hundreds of billions. One large enough asteroid. One sufficiently catastrophic pandemic. One war that goes further than any previous war. And it is over. All of it. Musk has said, "I want to make humanity a multi-planetary species before some extinction-level event takes us out." He is not being dramatic. He is being a risk manager for the most important asset that has ever existed. But here is where the story turns. Because for every alarm Elon Musk has sounded about what could go wrong, and he has sounded many, loudly, and with data, he has paired it with a vision of what could go right that is so expansive, so genuinely extraordinary, that it is almost impossible to hold in your mind all at once. He believes, not as a hope but as a near certainty within his lifetime, that we are approaching what he calls an age of abundance that will make today look like the Dark Ages. Think about what that means. Energy abundance. Solar power and battery storage technology advancing at the rate of semiconductors means that within 20 years, clean energy will be so cheap, it will approach free. The energy poverty that has kept billions of people in darkness, literally and figuratively, will end. Not because governments decided to be more generous, because the technology made it inevitable. Food abundance, vertical farming, lab-grown protein, AI-optimized agriculture, the ancient terror of starvation, the thing that has haunted human beings since we first walked upright, solved. Not for the wealthy few, for everyone. Intelligence abundance. When AI is not the monster in the machine, but the tool in every hand, every person on Earth, regardless of where they were born or what language they speak or how much money their parents had, will have access to the equivalent of the world's best doctor, the world's best lawyer, the world's best teacher, instantly, for free, and beyond Earth. He describes a future where the sight of rockets landing themselves upright, which the world watched in stunned disbelief the first time SpaceX did it, will be as routine as commercial air travel. Where the cost of reaching orbit drops to the point where a ticket to Mars is within the reach of an ordinary person. Where the first city on Mars is not a research station but a civilization. 100,000 people living and working and building something entirely new on a world that humanity chose for itself. The turning point is this: we are not passive passengers on the journey to that future. Every generation that has ever lived was shaped by forces it did not choose and could not control. By wars they did not start. By technologies they did not invent. By systems that preceded them by centuries. This generation, your generation, the people alive right now, the people watching this, is the first generation in human history that is being asked not to survive the future, but to decide it. To choose, consciously and deliberately, what kind of future gets built. And that is either the most exciting invitation ever extended to a generation of human beings, or the heaviest responsibility. Most likely, both. Lesson 1. The biggest dangers are the ones nobody is talking about. Musk has built a career out of identifying risks that were not being taken seriously, and treating them with the seriousness they deserved before the evidence became undeniable. Electric cars were not commercially viable in 2004. Everyone in the automotive industry said so. He built them anyway. Not because he was certain they would work, because he was certain the alternative, continuing to burn fossil fuels at scale, was a risk that no one was adequately addressing. Reusable rockets were considered physically impractical. The entire aerospace establishment said so. He built them anyway, because the alternative, paying billions of dollars to throw rockets into the ocean after one use, was a risk to the economic viability of the entire space program. And now he is saying the same thing about AI, about population, about the single planet problem. These are not science fiction concerns. They are engineering problems. And the lesson that his life teaches is this: the most important problems are rarely the ones getting the most attention. The most important risks are the ones that feel too big, too distant, too abstract to organize a protest around or write a news headline about. But they are the ones that determine everything. Pay attention to what nobody is talking about. That is where the future is actually being decided. Lesson 2. The scale of your vision determines the scale of your life. Here is the thing that Elon Musk's life makes undeniable. The size of the problem you choose to work on determines the size of the life you live. Not in terms of wealth, not in terms of fame, in terms of meaning. He did not choose to work on problems that were comfortably within reach. He did not optimize for the version of success that was most likely to produce a quiet, comfortable, uncomplicated life. He chose the hardest problems he could find, the ones where failure was the most likely outcome, the ones where the stakes were so high that the weight of them would crush most people before they even began, and in choosing those problems, involuntarily shouldering the weight of questions that most people leave to someone else, he built a life of a scale and a meaning that no comfortable choice could have produced. The lesson is not to become Elon Musk. The lesson is to ask yourself honestly, are the problems I am working on worthy of the potential I was given? Because you were given potential, real, specific, irreplaceable potential. And the question of whether that potential gets expressed or quietly fades depends entirely on whether you are willing to apply it to something that genuinely matters. Lesson 3. Optimism is not naive. It is the only rational response to uncertainty. Musk has been called many things: visionary, reckless, genius, unstable, dangerous, necessary. But there is one word that captures something essential about the way he operates that most of his critics miss entirely. Optimistic. Not naively optimistic. Not the optimism of someone who has not looked at the data. The optimism of someone who has looked at every piece of dark data available, every risk, every failure probability, every worst-case scenario, and concluded that trying anyway is still the only rational choice. He has said, "I am not sure we will succeed, but I am sure that trying gives us a better chance than not trying." That is not hope. That is engineering. The calculation that the expected value of attempting something with a 20% chance of success is still higher than the guaranteed value of not attempting it at all. And this is the lesson that translates from SpaceX to Mars to your life and mine. The future is uncertain. The risks are real. The possibility of failure is genuine and documented and should be taken seriously. And trying anyway, showing up with full commitment to the attempt regardless of the outcome, is not recklessness. It is the only approach to an uncertain world that has ever produced anything worth having. I want to ask you something. Not about Elon Musk, not about rockets or AI or Mars, about you. What do you believe about the future? Not what you are supposed to believe. Not the optimistic answer you give at dinner parties. Not the cynical answer you think makes you sound realistic and sophisticated. What do you actually, privately, deeply believe about where the human story is going? Because here is what I have noticed. Most people have quietly given up on the future. Not loudly, not dramatically. They have not written a manifesto or joined a movement or declared their despair publicly. They have just stopped believing that the story is going anywhere good. They scroll through news that is almost uniformly catastrophic. They watch institutions fail and trust erode, and the problems that were supposed to be solved getting worse. And somewhere in the back of their chest, quietly, without announcement, they have concluded that this is probably how it ends. Not with a bang, with a long, slow, exhausted fade. And I want to say something to that part of you. Not with false comfort, not with empty reassurance, with the evidence of a man who looked at the same catastrophic data, who processed the full weight of everything that could go wrong, and concluded something different. He concluded that the game is not over, that the problems that look insurmountable from where we stand look very different from the perspective of someone willing to build a solution rather than mourn the problem. That the future is not a thing that happens to us, it is a thing we build. Every human being who ever lived gave you something. The language you think in, the medicine that kept you alive, the technology in your pocket that contains more information than the greatest library in the ancient world. Every one of those gifts was built by someone who looked at a problem and decided to solve it instead of accepting it. You are not a spectator to the future. You are a participant. And the question that Elon Musk's life asks every person who encounters it is not, do you agree with everything he has done? The question is, what are you building? What problem have you decided is yours to work on? What piece of the future are you responsible for constructing with this specific, irreplaceable, unrepeatable combination of gifts and experiences and perspectives that you and only you were given? The future will shock you, but only if you are watching from the outside. If you are building it. If you are one of the people with their hands on the materials of what comes next. It will not shock you. It will feel like the inevitable result of everything you chose to work on. That is the invitation. That has always been the invitation. So here is where we land, not with a prediction, not with a timeline, not with a list of technologies to watch or stocks to buy or survival strategies for the apocalypse. With a question, the only question that has ever mattered when a human being is confronted with the scale of what is possible and the urgency of what is at stake.
What are you going to do about it?
Not in a grand, world-changing Elon Musk building rocket sense. Although if that is what you are called to, if the scale of the world's problems genuinely ignites something in you that demands that level of response, then for the love of everything human, do not let anyone talk you out of it. But for most of us, the answer is smaller than a rocket and no less important. It is. Learn something today that you did not know yesterday about where the world is going. Because the future belongs to the people who understand it before it arrives. It is. Apply your specific, particular, irreplaceable gifts to a problem that actually matters. Not the safe problem, the real one, the one that keeps coming back to you when you are honest about what you care about. It is. Stop being a passive consumer of a future that other people are building and start being an active participant in the version you actually want to live in. Elon Musk is not building the future for you. He is building his version of it, the version that his specific fears and his specific gifts and his specific obsessions demand. You have your own version, different from his, smaller perhaps in scope, no less important in meaning. The future of humanity will shock you, unless you help build it, and then it will feel exactly like what it is. The inevitable result of people who cared enough to try. If this video opened something in you, share it with one person who needs to think bigger today. Leave a comment telling me what part of the future you want to help build. Subscribe to Motivation Arc because every single week we bring you the ideas and the stories that do not just change how you think, they change what you do next. The future is not coming. It is being built right now by people like you. We will see you in the next one.